Remember James Damore, the now infamous software engineer at Google who was fired from his job for perpetuating gender stereotypes? Well, this week has shown us that the tech industry is about as backwards as you can possibly fucking get, considering that the CEO of Node Package Manager, better known as NPM, tweeted, "If you are not a white dude and have things to say about JavaScript testing, please submit a talk to Assert.js." Now, we also have to mention the fact here that Isaac is a white guy and he submitted a talk to this conference. So it seems that his rules apply to all white guys except for him. How convenient. Thankfully, Isaac at least tries to provide some clarification as to why he holds this position. He says, "I'm encouraging people who are not white dudes to submit talks because I want there to be good content at this conference, period. If the speaker proposals are all/mostly from white dudes, the quality of content suffers due to a limited pool." How would you know that? A limited pool could still be a really good limited pool. You're making assumptions before you know anything. Then he says this is extremely basic math. Isaac, extremely basic math to you, maybe. Think about how insulting that might be to all the people out there who are still struggling with math. You are about to set up a problem that is going to explain the situation to them, and you're saying it's extremely basic. Be a little bit more inclusive with your language. Think about the people out there who might not be as good at math as you are. Please, have some empathy. Isaac continues with his rationale. He says, even if reverse discrimination were a real thing, it isn't. And even if the demographics of speakers doesn't matter, it does. If all anyone cares about is the merit of the content of the talks, it isn't. And you literally cannot see gender, race, etc. You can. Wait. Hold on, though. Isaac just said, if all anyone cares about is the merit of the contents of the talks, which it isn't, and you can't not see gender or race, why would he say, why not just blindly review talks based on their quality? Seems like this guy isn't optimizing for merit. Isaac, pick a position, please. It turns out I was right about the math. Alan Hoffmeister asks, would you mind explaining this basic math? At the moment, I fail to understand how skin color is related to quality of content. That's because it isn't. But let's defer to Isaac. Isaac says, let's say there are 1,000 people interested in the subject, and 20 of them, 2%, have excellent ideas for talks they can deliver excellently. Further speculate that there are 40 people with good talk ideas they will deliver poorly, and 100 people with terrible talk ideas. We're running with a lot of assumptions here, but let's go with it. Assume that, as Alan says, skin color is completely unrelated to quality of content. These groups are demographically spread out evenly. Let's say 600 of the 1,000 people are white and 500 of the 1,000 people are men. In this model, 12 of the excellent talks given excellently, ideal proposals, are from white people. 6 of those white people are men. Is this the whole equality thing coming in? Where if there are 12 good ideas, you think, well, half the population's men, half the population's women, so good ideas must be split evenly, because that's not how the real world works. Of the 40 meh proposals, 12 are white men. Of the bad proposals, 60 are white men. The first filter on what gets into the conference is what gets submitted as a proposal. If all the proposals come from white men, then you've already ruled out 70% of the best talks. Isaac, that is not how the fucking world works. You can have good content coming from one group of people. Just because there's a lack of diversity doesn't inherently mean you are lacking quality. It just means it's not a diverse group of people. That's it. It's not that hard. If the conference selects 10 talks and all 10 are from white dudes, you are guaranteed to not have 100% excellent talks given excellently. Isaac, did it ever occur to you that the top 10 people just might happen to be white? I mean, you are the one that's saying reverse racism isn't a thing, yet you're looking at a group of 10 white people, and you come to the conclusion that they can't possibly be the 10 best people because they're white. In all fairness to Isaac, though, he does say, The assumptions in this model are extremely overgenerous, of course, but even in this model, demographic diversity drives better content. Of course, he never exactly says how, he just keeps saying this, as all diversity and inclusion activists do. They just say diversity and inclusion is better and it leads to better results. How? It does. IRL non-white and non-male people, especially trans people and women of color, don't submit as many talks because of out-of-band social pressure. Of course, it's social pressure. It can't possibly be that there are lower numbers, that there's a pipeline issue. No, it's always the social pressures of all the straight men in tech who just push all the women and the minorities out. It's always that. Their safety at a conference is less guaranteed, especially if they're on stage. I could not think of a safer place to be than a technical conference. It's a bunch of dorks who program, and you're there to talk about programming. And then you get on stage where everybody in the crowd is looking at one person, and you want to tell me that's an unsafe place to be? You have a crowd of witnesses. What are you even talking about? Now, the issue with a situation like this is actually finding people who are willing to say that they do not agree with Isaac, that they think that he is being racist even though the target of his racism is white people. If you say that, well, you could be another James Damore and you could get fired from your job. And Twitter isn't the best place to look at this either because anybody can chime in, anybody can retweet, anybody can like. They don't have to be a programmer. So I can understand not wanting to give legitimacy to some of these voices because it's Twitter and it's a random group of people. But you would think within specific communities where you can't chalk everything up to trolls, like a subreddit specifically for Node.js, you would think you'd at least give a little bit of credit to the people who peruse that subreddit. But no, Isaac won't even consider our node because Isaac says our node is not a part of the node community. It's a place for Gamergate, Kotaku in Action, the Red Pill to launch attacks on the Node.js community. Think about that. One guy, one white male, gets to decide what is and isn't a part of the community. And because he doesn't like the things that are being said within a certain subreddit, even though a lot of the people out there had some very valid points, he gets to single-handedly say they are not a part of our community. How inclusive. But thankfully, not everybody sticks to Reddit, like James Gladney, who says, as a non-white dude that has things to say about JS testing, I find this offensive. Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions about Mr. James Gladney here, but judging by his profile, I'm going to say he might be a black male or a generic light-skinned badass at the very least. So now confronted with a black man who does not agree with Isaac's original racist, no whites tweet, what does Isaac have to say in return? Submit a talk anyway. Look at you, Isaac. You can't even confront the very minorities you're trying to help when one of them disagrees with you. But instead of addressing the one tweet in opposition to his original anti-white tweet from a black man in the industry, rather than address that tweet, instead, Isaac decides to quote tweet a tweet that says, "That face when you a douchebag bigot." And he says, this is the kind of shit that our node sends my way on a regular basis. So he doesn't address the black man in tech who disagrees with his tweet. No, instead he addresses Ducati Rocks 0369, who says, that face when you a douchebag bigot. Good for you, Isaac. Good for you. Isaac follows his quote tweet of Ducati Rocks with another tweet that reads, I get the impression that some are resentful that NPM/JavaScript's rise as tech hegemony means they have to engage with us SJWs. But not really. See, the thing is, you are a CEO of a tech company, and you publicly tweeted something that excludes white men. And there's no CNN articles, there's no story on Fox News, there's no New York Times articles, there's nothing. But then when a software engineer at Google writes a 10-page paper with scientific citations still advocating for diversity and inclusion, there are New York Times articles, there are stories on CNN, there are stories on Fox News, and on top of that, he was fired. That's why we're resentful.